Please help me to reach 1,000 subscribers. I never thought words spoken in frustration could erase an entire marriage, but that's exactly what happened. My name is Claire. I'm 35 years old, and until a few months ago, I believed my husband Daniel would always stay. No matter what I said. No matter how far I pushed. I was wrong. Daniel and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5. He wasn't flashy or loud. He didn't dominate conversations or try to prove himself. He was steady. Reliable. The kind of man who remembered small details and showed up when it mattered. At least that's what I see now. Back then, I told myself he was boring. Predictable. Too safe. My ex Mark was the opposite. Charismatic. Confident. The kind of man who filled a room without trying. We broke up years before I met Daniel, but somehow he never really left my mind. I didn't want him back. Or so I thought. I just liked the idea of him. The version of him that existed in my head, polished by time and nostalgia. The night everything ended didn't feel dramatic at first. No screaming. No thrown objects. Just a quiet dinner at home after a long day. Daniel asked me how my lunch with friends went. I rolled my eyes and said it was fine, then added, half joking, "You know, sometimes I think I should have married Mark. At least life wouldn't feel so dull." I laughed when I said it. I expected him to laugh too, maybe fire back with a sarcastic comment. He didn't. He looked at me for a moment, not angry, not hurt in the way I expected. Just still. Like something inside him had gone quiet. I tried to soften it. "I'm kidding. You know I don't mean it like that." He nodded slowly and said, "Okay." That was it. No argument. No questions. He finished his dinner, washed his plate, and went to bed early. I told myself he was tired. That I'd smooth it over in the morning like I always did. The next day, I woke up to an empty house. His car was gone. His side of the closet looked untouched, but his overnight bag was missing. I texted him asking where he was. No response. I called. Straight to voicemail. For the first time in years, that small, uncomfortable feeling crept in. The one I usually ignored. By the third day, I was annoyed more than worried. I told my sister he was being dramatic. "He's always been sensitive," I said. "He'll come back once he cools off." But a week passed. Then 2. His silence wasn't loud. It was precise. No replies. No explanations. Just absence. When I finally reached his brother, the response shattered the confidence I'd been clinging to. "He's not cooling off," his brother said. "He's done." Done. Such a small word for something that felt so massive. That's when the memories started replaying differently. The times I compared him to Mark, even casually. The jokes about how Mark was more ambitious, more confident, more exciting. I'd framed them as harmless honesty. Now they sounded like slow, deliberate cuts. I went back through old messages between Daniel and me. I noticed how often he tried to connect and how often I'd brushed him off. How many times he chose peace instead of confrontation. I'd mistaken his restraint for weakness. 2 weeks later, a courier delivered an envelope. Inside were copies of bank statements, a list of shared bills, and a short note written in his neat handwriting. It said he'd already spoken to a lawyer. That he wanted to keep things civil. That he hoped I'd eventually understand why he had to leave. I sat on the floor and cried, not the dramatic kind but the quiet, hollow kind. The kind that comes when you realize there's no one left to blame. I reached out to Mark after that. Not because I wanted him but because I needed to know. We met for coffee. Within 20 minutes I saw the cracks I'd ignored for years. The arrogance. The subtle contempt for everyone else. The way he talked over me, not with passion but with entitlement. Halfway through, he checked his phone and barely looked up while I was talking. And suddenly, it hit me. This was the man I'd held up as the standard. The fantasy I used to measure my husband against. Daniel never raised his voice at me. Never made me feel small. He didn't disappear emotionally while sitting across the table. He didn't need to dominate to feel like a man. By the time I realized that, it was too late. I don't know where Daniel is now. I stopped trying to find out. Some losses aren't meant to be recovered from. They're meant to be understood. I used to think love was about excitement and intensity. Now I know it's about respect. And the cruelest lesson I've learned is that the moment you make someone feel replaceable, you teach them exactly how to leave. I didn't lose my husband when he vanished. I lost him the moment I told him he was second place.